All right, welcome back. We are, as you can tell, working on our engines. So I'm getting everything off this engine and I'm starting to install it onto this engine, which feels really good to finally be bolting pieces back onto an engine rather than just taking them all off. Now the plan in this video is going to be to get this engine completely ready to go into the car. I probably won't get it all done today, but I've got a long weekend ahead of me, and so I can knock this stuff out hopefully this weekend. Where I'm at now, engine is clean, everything is prepped and ready. I've replaced a couple like sensors and stuff on here. Quick rundown of what I'm doing and kind of what's going on, and then we'll just jump to some time-lapse footage and I'll just be working on this. So we gotta get this engine disassembled. I've got a bunch of new gaskets for common leak points on this engine. We got a lot of stuff ahead of us, but let me show you what I got right over there on the workbench, and then we'll jump to working on this. Okay, so as you can see, I've got a laptop with some diagrams. This is just some general stuff just so I can get a good visual of what's going on. And then I printed these diagrams out from Audi's website where you can search for parts. And I just highlighted all the parts that I ended up getting. So I printed all these out, I put them together on Canva on a piece of paper, and then this is the order invoice from all of the seals and parts that I ordered. So everything is highlighted and then numbered, and then the number corresponds with the part that's listed here, and then that's the part that I have here. And I inspected any other O-rings and they all looked really good. So these are the only ones that I'm gonna replace. I'm not doing every single one because, well, one, it cost a lot of money, but two, a lot of these were fine. And so I didn't really need to do a lot of these. Believe it or not, this is over $300 in just gaskets and O-rings, and this is coming from FCP Euro. This isn't even straight from Audi, but I would find the part on Audi's website, on their diagram, get the part number, look it up on FCP Euro, and then I'd order all the parts from there. So we've got injector seals, we've got some intake manifold gaskets, we've got some other coolant O-rings, throttle body gasket, and a bunch of stuff like that. So let me show you what I got going on here. This here is a coolant pipe. These tend to be common leak points. Actually, that engine over there, the engine that came out of the car, was leaking from this point. If you buy this whole thing together, which is really easy to break these, I broke the one that was on here, even though it was already broken, I broke it more taking it off. They're like $300, so don't break them. Be really careful if you're taking it off. Take your time. Anyways, I gotta put this on there. I've got a couple more gaskets to replace and just kind of keep swapping parts over. As I do that, I'm also gonna eventually be swapping the harnesses, so that wiring harness needs to go on this one. That'll be a big step, but a much needed step. But anyways, yeah, so I'll get this thing put on, and then I'm gonna go ahead and start disassembling the other motor, and then we will start putting this motor together. So I'm going to start off here by pulling the wiring harness out. I got to get this connector out from underneath the turbos. It's pretty tight, pretty hard to get to, but I did manage to get it. I then sprayed all the connectors with WD-40 just to help them all come loose, to try to avoid breaking any of them so that, you know, I can use it on the other engine. And yeah, then I got this manifold off and went ahead and moved over to the driver's side and started working on that one, just getting everything ready to be swapped over. Here I'm pulling the motor mount bracket on the passenger side of the engine. That's got the starter actually attached to it. So I'm kind of taking the whole wiring harness with all the brackets at the same time. What I decided to do when I pulled the harness off of the other engine, I left all the brackets on the engine. And then when I took the harness off of the other engine, the harness I was going to actually install onto the other engine, I took the brackets off with the harness. And then that way, when I pulled it over to put it around the other engine, all I had to do was start putting all the brackets back in place, and I could see where they all went. And so then once they all got put in place, it kind of helped put the harness kind of where it belongs, which helped me figure out kind of where this harness needed to go, because obviously it's a lot of wires, a lot of plugs. You can see just how much stuff I'm trying to work with and trying to get it all back to where it belongs, so don't actually miss any plugs. It's quite the trick. But not only did I do all the wiring, I also was swapping over all the vacuum lines. So all the hoses, all the solenoids, everything all at one time. And it's just a spider web of just hoses and wires and everything everywhere. But because I left those brackets on there, I was able to start just putting it all right back in place. Same thing with like the starter, just went right back on. I bolted that motor mount bracket on there, and then it just took everything else along with it. So it was actually not
too bad, but there was a lot of plugs and a lot of wires, and it was kind of a lot. I made sure I did it all in one day. That way I didn't like pull the harness off and then, give it a day or two. I wanted to swap it right away. And that way it was fresh in my brain where everything came from and where everything was going to go. But yeah, it was quite the feat, but I managed. Over here on the workbench, you can see I'm watching a YouTube video while replacing the injector seals. I didn't need to do this necessarily, but when the injectors are this hard to get out, it's just kind of a no-brainer. You just have to replace them. That way you know that they're fresh. Here I'm reinstalling them back into the engine. I didn't have access to the tool that crimps down the little Teflon seals in there, so I had to kind of crimp them down as best I could and then just shove it in the engine, being careful not to mess them up, but I did manage to get them all in there, and it went pretty good.
All right, so in preparation to putting this intake manifold runner on, I'm going to be replacing all of the gaskets. I cleaned it up a little bit, just kind of wiped it down. It doesn't need anything crazy. There's two different types of gaskets on here. So there's ones like this. There's two of these. These are like, they've got this extra little loop, and then there's two that don't have that loop. So relatively similar. And you can see on this actual runner itself, here's where your loops will go around. These are like oil feed return things. I don't really know. But anyways, so yeah, these just kind of push in like so. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of WD-40 on them to give them a little bit more, like, slip in a little better. But let's see if we can kind of get them generally in place, and then I'll start working them around and get them on. You want to be careful not to like stretch them out, so you don't want to like push them out. You just want to push them straight down and push them evenly all throughout. So usually I start on like one side and then push a little bit over here, a little bit over here, a little bit here, a little bit here, until I can kind of get them worked in evenly. Again, you don't want to stretch any of them out the wrong way. So you can see right there, I got these two little feet lined up here, and then there's a notch on the top. You just kind of line those up and press them in. The biggest part is this bottom kind of arch thing right here. That tends to not want to go in, so I've just been using my nail and kind of just working it down. And then once they look pretty good, move on to the next one. So yeah, these are the two that don't have the little extra horseshoe things, and then these ones are the horseshoe things. So I'll go ahead and get all these put on, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, all these are in there and they're in place. I did go ahead and clean the inside of the injectors. I kind of did like a DIY thing with brake cleaner and a battery, just kind of like turn them on, spray stuff through them, kind of clean them out and get them working. You don't want to forget these little things, little metal tabs. When installing the other side, I did forget them, and I put the whole intake manifold, runner, everything on, and then I realized I forgot that, and then I had to turn around and take it right back off. So don't forget that. When I took this thing off, I was actually able to leave the foam inside of it. You can get to these 4 bolts pretty easily, and then you just have to peel the foam back, and you can get to the other bolts through here. So in a previous video, I was saying you gotta pull all this foam out and then you can get to the bolts, but you can actually just peel the foam back, get to the bolts, and then the foam actually helps keep the bolts in there so then you don't lose them. There's this bracket. There's a solenoid that clips to that bracket, so get that nice and tightened. Okay, so I've said this in previous videos, but I'm gonna state it again. When you install these, you have to make sure that you hold these flaps in the open position. All right, let's not forget this gasket right here. Now, I did not actually order new ones because the gaskets on this engine that has lower miles, this newer engine, all the intake gaskets were actually replaced according to the Carfax not that long ago. You don't want to forget these flaps. These are your intake air guides. So they only go in one way. So if they don't go in all the way you're trying to put them in, like that, if it doesn't go in all the way, go ahead and just flip them around. This V side goes on the inside, and then there. Lastly, what I did is I went ahead and left the old injectors on this harness, just so that way I knew which plugs went to which injectors, and that way I didn't get them mixed up or confused or accidentally forget. Okay, so all of our injectors are in place. I'm going to go ahead and push my harness up in here. It's going to tuck back in that corner, and then you can see we've got this foam right here. I also kind of kept that mostly intact. You can see it's got its place. So let's do a quick mental checklist. Make sure all these keepers are in there. Make sure all of our Injectors have gaskets. I replaced all of the injector seals. So we're gonna kind of take a quick look. This is where each one of our things are. Oh yeah, see, I'm glad I took a look. There's still a little rubber O-ring inside of that. So had I not paid attention, I would have accidentally tried to shove 2 O-rings in there, and then this injector either wouldn't have gone in or it would have been leaking, and I would have been pulling this intake runner right back off. So double check. The biggest thing that you're gonna be wrestling is your hard line for your fuel right over here. It's gonna kind of be in your way most of the time. It is gonna take a little bit of pressure to push those rubber O-rings on. Something I like to do, and I'm actually gonna do that right now, is put a little WD-40 on my finger, and then just go ahead and rub it on these little injector seals. There's just these little rubber O-rings. If it's not going, it feels like it's hung up, don't try and force it. This harness goes inside of this plug here, it's sticking out, so make sure that gets tucked in there because you can't get it in there after. Use a couple glove taps. So I'm gonna see if I can get it started on some threads. Our injectors have relatively seated. There we go. I'm gonna walk these in just barely, just so I know they're holding. Now I'm gonna peel this foam down and find one of my bolts. Let's see if we can get one of these to bite. Yep, okay. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to get those flaps to open up, and then those metal blades I put in there, those flaps are currently stuck on the bottom side of them, so they're not able to open. Get them pulled back enough so I can open them and then reinstall it, and then that way they're tight, and then they can open up all the way, and then they don't close all the way, they only close part way. I'm able to get them all the way open now, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get my hand in here and I'm gonna hold that in the full open position while I run a couple of these bolts part way in. So you kind of got to be a bit of a magician to get some of this sometimes. That's opening nicely. It can open all the way. Again, I'm not going tight yet. I'm just kind of running the bolts in so everything is in place. This top foam, if you look at it, usually you can kind of decipher. And down there, yep, there it goes. Cool. Fuel line, get that threaded on. These pliers come in really handy. They're it's like a crescent wrench, but you can actually grab stuff. So I can get it set to my desired size. And I can go ahead and grab this and just pull it tight. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take just a small little 1/4 inch, and I'm gonna go through these by hand and just kind of feel them all. I'm actually putting it through my fingers like this, and then I could just twist it and feel it. When it starts to get like relatively hard, where I've put like some good effort into it, then I stop. So now we've got our harness, and you can see we've got a bunch of different points where like they've got openings in the foam. So this is for this clip. I'll just shove that up in there. Anyways, I'm gonna find all this. I'm gonna get all these wires all kind of reassembled and slowly start piecing it all together and figure out how this is gonna go.
Okay, so here you can see I'm putting in the AC compressor. This thing was quite a trick to get in there behind all the wiring and all the hoses, and then you got to get it hooked up with the shaft that comes from the gearing, and anyways, it's tight. So I managed to get it in there after a few tries. Had to do some finagling, some finessing, but I managed to get it in there and get the shaft on there and get it tight. Then I will go ahead and move on to all of the vacuum lines, trying to sort it all out, get the solenoids put in place. I had my phone, I had some pictures that I took before I took it all apart, so I had some reference photos of kind of where things go. But it is quite the puzzle trying to route all of those things. You can see I'm wrapping all this side up. It's starting to look pretty good, starting to come together. It's not too big of a mess. It's all consolidating pretty well. So now moving on to the alternator. Believe it or not, this alternator actually has coolant lines running through it to keep it cool. So I had to go ahead and swap the O-rings on those and get those cleaned up. I cleaned up the alternator and got it all installed, everything plugged in and ready to go.
Okay, so we are ready to put this intake on, I believe. In order to get this intake in there, you got to remove your throttle body. And then you've got 2 tabs right here. And these go into 2 rubber grommets, and then you've got a bolt here and a bolt right there. So to start, you got to go from the above, kind of push it in, open up, drops down. There's a hose coming from your intake right here. It's an intake hose, and you have to route that onto the top of the PCV. We've got the grommets are going on, one here and one right here. Now, we also have 3 different things going in, one there, one there, one there. All of those have to go in at the same time. So we're putting all those in, and as you can see, this engine it was leaking a lot. There's standing oil about up to here. So this thing was like full of oil. Anyways, so that is what we're working with on that side. What I'm probably gonna do is actually put this throttle body back on right now before I push this all into place, because it's gonna be really tight. So, like most of the other stuff I put together on this car, it all kind of has to go on together at the same time. Putting a little bit of WD-40 on it just so they slide in well. I just was reminded there is 2 electrical connectors. So I gotta find those. Right, where are they? Oh, they're right here, okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna fish this wire up into this, under this line here. And I'm just gonna put it up like this, because I think that's gonna be my best bet. So, we're just gonna stick that right in there. Put this in. So now, we're gonna get this throttle body in place. Okay. Try to work this. I think we're pretty much in place. Again, my drill is on setting number 1. It doesn't go very tight. It's gonna be put in with a magnet because I'm not about to drop one of these. Okay. Again, not cranking them very tight. They're just snug. This whole system, if you want to get your PCV out, it all has to come out together. There's screws that go from the back of the PCV in there, and if you don't take the whole intake out with the PCV, you can't get them out, so don't force it. Okay, let's go through with the hand wrench and torque everything down to a spec that feels about right. Okay, look at that. We have an intake on our engine. The vacuum lines took forever to figure out where they go, because they don't exactly give you a map with these things. New O-ring on that. We've got this, I believe goes here. Put just a hair of WD-40. Goes here. Just gonna run across the front. It's in place. Audi has these hoses marked, like where the clamps are supposed to go. Not that it really matters all that much, but I like to try and follow them. That way the clamps are relatively where they belong. All right, well, it's the next day. I was up till 1:30 last night working on this thing, and slept in a little bit, had church today, and anyways. So I did a few things this morning. I went ahead and put all the spark plugs in, and I just went through and connected all the wiring harnesses on the top, got the bottom wiring harnesses in. I got the brackets for the motor mounts. So we're putting our tensioner back on. We got to replace a couple of O-rings, and then this thing is pretty much ready to go back in the car. As I've worked on it, taken it apart, put it together, I've realized a lot of it kind of just has to go together at the same time. There's things that, like, if you put this on, then this piece won't fit, but if you put this piece on, then this piece can't really go on straight. So you kind of just have to, like, put it all together at the same time, which is fine. You have to really pay attention and be intentional when you're putting it together. Okay, so we're gonna start with this big bolt. Pull this. Ideally, what you would do in the proper world is you would pull this thing down and stick that in. Basically, you can get it off and you can put it on without having to do all of that. So be smart and do it that way, not the way I did it, but Goodyear belt. Ironically enough, this is all that the belt is. Let's keep buttoning this thing up. I got a few things on this side to button up. Got that on there. There's a couple connectors that I still have yet to identify. Now stick with me for a second, okay? you almost have to have just a slight case of ADHD to work on these cars. Because you kind of have to do everything at once. You can't just do one thing at a time. And so you think about, if someone can't focus on one thing and you just kind of jump from one thing to the next, as long as you're making progress, it's actually almost better because you kind of like, I'll be putting this bolt on and I'll be staring at something else, thinking about a different thing. And in that meantime, I remember, oh yeah, wait a minute, this dipstick's supposed to be in there. And then I just remembered to put the dipstick in there because I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. I wasn't focused on the one thing. I was focused on something else. But that reminded me. I was like, oh wait, yeah, that needs to go on there. So in a way, these are almost ADHD friendly cars. Oh yeah, we got an O-ring on here. This is probably gonna spill some oil. I probably should have thought that through. Okay. Here we are with a working motor ready to go back in the car.